Richard Hoggart's The Uses of Literacy, Aspects of Working Class Life is a seminal text in cultural studies, offering a profound exploration of working-class culture in post-war Britain. Published in 1957, the book examines how industrialization, urbanization, and the rise of mass media have reshaped the cultural identity of the working class. Hoggart blends sociological analysis with personal recollections to document the richness and complexity of working-class life, while critiquing the cultural changes brought about by modernization and consumerism. His work is both a celebration of traditional working-class values and a lamentation of their erosion under the influence of commercial culture. Hoggart begins by painting a vivid picture of pre-war working-class life, focusing on the communities in the industrial towns of northern England. He portrays a world defined by close-knit communities, mutual aid, and shared experiences. The social fabric of this life is interwoven with practices such as neighborly support, local traditions, and communal leisure activities, all of which fostered a sense of belonging and resilience. Hoggart emphasizes the oral culture of the working class, with its reliance on storytelling, humor, and direct communication. He contrasts this with the detached and often superficial nature of modern mass media, which he argues alienates individuals from their communities and dilutes the richness of their cultural heritage. Central to Hoggart's analysis is his exploration of the cultural texts that shaped working-class life. He examines the role of popular literature, newspapers, and music halls, which were accessible and resonated deeply with the lived experiences of the working class. These cultural forms were not merely sources of entertainment, but also vehicles for expressing collective identities and aspirations. However, Hoggart critiques how these traditional forms of culture began to wane with the advent of modern consumer goods and the rise of mass media. He identifies this shift as a form of cultural colonization, where the working class population becomes a passive consumer audience for content created by distant and profit-driven elites. A recurring theme in Hoggart's work is the tension between tradition and modernity. He acknowledges that modernization brought material improvements, such as better housing and increased access to education, which were transformative for many working-class families. However, he also warns that these changes often came at the cost of eroding traditional values and community bonds. For Hoggart, the commercialization of culture replaced genuine, lived experiences with artificial representations, leading to a loss of authenticity in everyday life. He critiques the homogenizing effects of consumer culture, which he believes imposes middle-class norms and values onto the working class, thereby eroding their distinctive identity. Hoggart is particularly critical of the emerging mass media, including popular magazines, radio, and television, which he sees as undermining the critical faculties of the working class. He argues that these new forms of media encourage passive consumption rather than active engagement, promoting escapism and superficial pleasures over meaningful content. In his view, the mass media exploits the desires and insecurities of its audience, offering them a distorted image of life that prioritizes individualism, materialism, and glamour. This shift, he contends, marks a departure from the more grounded and collective ethos of traditional working-class culture. The book also delves into the impact of education on working-class life. Hoggart examines how the expansion of education offered new opportunities for social mobility, but also created tensions within working-class families. For those who embraced education as a means of upward mobility, there was often a sense of disconnection from their roots, as they adopted middle-class attitudes and aspirations. Hoggart describes this phenomenon as a cultural straddle, where individuals are caught between the values of their upbringing and the expectations of a more affluent and individualistic society. He expresses ambivalence about this process, recognizing its potential for personal growth, while lamenting its role in weakening the solidarity and identity of working-class communities. Hoggart's writing is characterized by its empathy and nuance. He avoids romanticizing working-class life, acknowledging its hardships, limitations, and conservatism. At the same time, he resists the patronizing attitudes often exhibited by middle-class commentators, who tend to view the working class as either victims of their circumstances or as inherently inferior. Instead, Hoggart portrays working-class culture as dynamic and resourceful, shaped by a unique set of values, practices, and social relations. He celebrates the resilience, humor, and creativity of the working class, while offering a sober critique of the forces threatening their way of life. Another key aspect of Hoggart's work is his methodological innovation. By combining personal memoir with cultural analysis, he bridges the gap between subjective experience and objective observation. His approach anticipates later developments in cultural studies, particularly the emphasis on understanding culture as a lived and contested process. Hoggart's use of autobiography allows him to speak from an insider perspective, lending authenticity and depth to his observations. This method also highlights the importance of everyday life as a site of cultural meaning, challenging the traditional focus on elite culture in academic studies. The uses of literacy had a significant impact on the field of cultural studies, influencing thinkers such as Raymond Williams, E.P. Thompson, and Stuart Hall. Its emphasis on the interplay between culture and power laid the groundwork for analyzing how cultural practices reflect and reinforce social hierarchies. Hoggart's critique of mass media and consumerism also resonates with contemporary debates about the impact of digital technology and globalization on cultural identity. His work underscores the need for a critical engagement with media and popular culture, encouraging readers to reflect on the ways these forces shape their perceptions and values. Despite its groundbreaking insights, the book has been critiqued for its nostalgic tone and its perceived idealization of pre-war working-class life. Some scholars argue that Hoggart overemphasizes the coherence and solidarity of working-class communities, downplaying the conflicts and inequalities within them. Others question his pessimism about modernity, suggesting that the cultural changes he laments may also have provided new forms of expression and agency for the working class. These critiques highlight the complexity of Hoggart's project, which seeks to balance a celebration of tradition with a critical analysis of change.